Yes.
Can you introduce yourself, and your portfolio at the ministry?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. My name is Eva Ment. I am Coordinating Director at the Ministry of Finance.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Then we settle down. Minister, as I indicated, take it away at the appropriate juncture. If we intend to interrupt you and ask you any questions, we would. But let's see how it plays out. So you can start.
Thank you very much, co-chairs and members. Peace be unto all of us. Honorable co-chairs and members of this ad hoc committee, good morning through you. Good morning to the Ghanaian people. I believe this process we are engaging here is a useful opportunity to strengthen our democratic processes. It's a very difficult process. According to my understanding of parliamentary history, this might be the first censure of a minister. Here, as I take the opportunity to speak to the matters so raised. My principal reflections today are to ensure that by the end of these proceedings, the truth would have taken center stage, and in the process, any unfounded doubts about my motives, my competence, and my character would have been dispelled. Before I proceed with my detailed responses, I'd like to make a personal comment to the Ghanaian people. Since the Ofori-Atta government came into office in 2017, everything we have sought to do was aimed at making the lives of the people better. We have been focused on this vision to improve lives, and in the first 4 years, our efforts were leading to a realization of the vision. Today, I acknowledge our economy is facing difficulties, and the people of Ghana are enduring hardships. As a person President Akufo-Addo has put in charge of this economy, I feel the pain personally, professionally, and in my soul. I see and feel the terrible impact of rising prices of goods and services on the lives and livelihoods of ordinary Ghanaians. I feel the stress of running a business, but it is the strength and perseverance of the people that inspire me and my colleagues in government every morning. And it's to press on. That is what gives me the strength to press on, to find solutions and relief for Ghanaians to the myriad of problems that our country and the rest of the world are facing, especially since March 2020. Co-chairs, let me use this opportunity to say to the Ghanaian people what I believe, with courage, every finance minister around the world may wish to say to their people now. I am truly sorry. When we set out so purposefully between 2017 and the early parts of 2020, we never imagined that a global pandemic such as COVID, with its prolonged economic impact, would inflict such pain and suffering upon the Ghanaian people. The shock to our system has been hard, and the impact on our livelihoods severe. But we have not been resting on our oars. We continue to work to keep the lights on, to avoid the queues at our filling stations as in other countries. Our classrooms are full. Our hospitals and dispensaries mostly stocked with medicines. We continue to pay salaries, and our roads continue to be built and fixed. Now let me get to the details. on the issue relating to despicable conflict of interest, ensuring that I directly benefit from Ghana's economic woes.
No, Mr. Minister. We just ruled that. No.
He's at liberty to.
No, wait a minute. We made a rule that you are not to deal with the item number 1, and you are not to deal with the item number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have indeed subsequently received a letter dated 16th November 2022 stating that this committee has upheld that said objection.
Yes, Honorable Minister, in contradistinction to what my Honorable Co-Chair has said, in terms of Article 82(4) of the Constitution, the Minister would have been entitled to be heard in his defense during the debate. And we have read, I'm being consistent, Honorable Katie. Yeah, so what I'm saying is that it is.
What my colleagues seem to be saying is that even though the committee is ruled, if you, the minister of your own volition, want to discuss it, then maybe go ahead. But let's think about it. Is that the ruling? Is that the sense of the committee?
Yeah. Council. Yeah. But
Honorable Co-Chairs, we appreciate your position on this matter, except that if he's being invited to speak to those issues that have been struck out, are you going to ask him questions because address them?
Yes. So the natural course of events, if he comments on them, he testifies on them, he opens himself up to questions by the members of the committee. So it's up to you, if your client wants to go on that trajectory, we are fine. But if he doesn't...
So let's explain a little bit further. We didn't take the decision lightly. We looked at the constitutional imperatives. We looked at the decision of Shiraj. That matter went as far as to the Supreme Court. We looked at that, and we thought that in criminal jurisprudence, it will be double jeopardy asking him to revisit this matter. In civil jurisprudence, it will be abuse of the process to ask him, it will be res judicata. We've gone through all those matters. But that is the sense of the committee. If your client believes that, in spite of the ruling, he wants to still have the committee on some matters we may not have been aware of, it's entirely entitled to. But of course, as we indicated, if he does, then of course our colleagues would want to ask him. That's not to say that he has anything he is hiding. That's not the point.
Honorable Co-Chairs, thank you very much. We have advised that inasmuch as those grounds have been struck off the record, we will not speak to them respectfully.
We can proceed to the next ground, which is the unconstitutional withdrawals from in respect of the Cathedral.
Thank you very much, Co-Chairs. Thank you for the clarification. The next is the grounds of the proponents claiming that there has been unconstitutional withdrawals from the Consolidated Fund in blatant contravention of Article 178 of the 1992 Constitution, supposedly for the construction of the President's Cathedral. Mr. Co-Chair, that took me for a loop since I did not know what the President's Cathedral was. Honorable Co-Chairs, let me first submit that I'm uncomfortable about the formulation of this ground. It presupposes that Parliament is assuming the jurisdiction to enforce and or interpret a provision of the Constitution against the combined effect of Articles 2(1) and 131, which grants the sole and exclusive power to the Supreme Court. Nonetheless, I say with both humility and confidence that I have not breached the Constitution in making payments to support the construction of the National Cathedral of Ghana.
Mr. Minister, Mr. Co-Chairman, clarify that I don't quite comprehend the point you make. The committee seems to be assuming what constitutional, assuming constitutional position that you believe we're entitled to. There is an allegation that some monies have been withdrawn from the constitution, from the consolidated fund. The point made by the proponents is that they believe that those monies were withdrawn unconstitutionally. We are not here to interpret any constitution. Just simply asking you to respond to that allegation. Whether it is true or not, we have no clue. So if you challenge the constitutionality of it, let's hear your grounds in respect of that.
Mr. Co-Chair, let me then proceed to really talk about exactly what you have.
You may well do.
Honorable Co-Chairs, 3 days ago, when the proponents were here, they alleged I had made payments from the contingency fund to support the National Cathedral. I want to state that this is just not true. Let me be categorical. I have taken no money from the contingency fund to make payments for the National Cathedral. It appears the proponents have confused the contingency fund passed by Parliament. In preparing the annual budgets, the practice is that provision is made for indicative expenditures that have not been fully costed at the time of the budget presentation. Provisions are made in the contingency vote to cater for such expenditures. For example, in 2014, there was no specific allocation in the 2014 budget for Ghana's participation in the FIFA World Cup in Brazil. The cabinet of President John Mahama in March 2014 at the time approved then some $9.622 million for that tournament, including that amount which was flown to Brazil in a private jet for the players. A more current example is Ghana's participation in Qatar. The Black Stars qualified for the 2022 FIFA World Cup way after the 2022 budget presented on 16 November 2021 was approved by Parliament. No specific amount was thus budgeted for it, but through the contingency vote, we have been able to provide funds legitimately for the team to participate in the competition. Expenditures in respect of the National Cathedral were made from the contingency vote under the other government obligations vote, as has been the practice before my tenure. I have copies of several payments from the contingency vote dating back to 2015 to share. Honorable Co-Chairs, as Finance Minister, I'm fully aware of the approval procedures for use of the contingency fund and have not breached its requirements. The National Cathedral is 100% owned by the state and is not the President's Cathedral as described by the proponents. Indeed, the Attorney General issued an opinion on 6 January 2022 that the National Cathedral is a state-owned company limited by guarantee under the Ghana Museums and Monuments Board. Honorable Co-Chairs, the policy direction and updates on the National Cathedral have been publicly presented over the years through the National Budget Statement and Economic Policy presented to Parliament. In paragraph 158 of my budget speech on the 2019 Budget Statement and Economic Policy, I announced on the floor of Parliament government's vision for the National Cathedral, as well as a commitment to facilitate the construction by providing the land, the secretariat, and seed money. This subject was part of the policy approval of the budget after the extensive debate. Subsequently, regular updates on the progress of the construction of the National Cathedral have been provided to Parliament and the nation. These include 2020 Budget Statement of 385, which announced the establishment of the Board of Trustees and Secretariat for the Cathedrals. Mid-year review of the 2020 Budget Statement, paragraph 279, which provided an update on the groundbreaking ceremony held on 5th March 2020 to mark the formal commencement of the construction phase of the project. 2021 Budget Statement Economic Policy, paragraphs 1132 and 1134, which informed the House of the letter of intent signed on 25th November 2020 between the National Cathedral of Ghana trustees and Ribad JV, led by Resign, Babisoti and Sons and Desimoni, and also the appointment of Apostle Professor Opoku Nyina as new chairman of the Board of Trustees on 8 February 2021. The media review of the 2021 budget statement, paragraphs 354 and 355, which announced the expansion of the project to include a Bible Museum of Africa, and biblical gardens, as well as the establishment of the 100 CD a month Ketwe Beer and Swag Club, in line with the original plan to encourage as many donors as possible to contribute towards the establishment of this national monument. In conclusion, co-chairs, all the payments made for the National Cathedral were lawfully done and from the contingency vote under the other government obligations vote and not from the contingency fund as alleged by the proponents.
Hold it, Mr. Minister. Hold it a minute. Let's come. If you become privy to what we discussed. We're wondering whether at this stage we should ask you questions after you finish with the first allegation or let you finish with the lot. I think the consensus is that finish with your presentation and then we'll ask questions if we do have any.
Thank you very much, and I'll also submit the Attorney General's opinion on that. Thank you very much. I will go through all the grounds and then we can focus on the questions.
So, Honorable Minister, you have to go to ground 4. Ground 4. Deliberate and dishonest misreporting of economic data to Parliament.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. Let me now focus on the grounds claiming deliberate and dishonest misreporting of economic data to Parliament. The issue of deliberate misreporting of economic data to Parliament is not just unfortunate, but simply untrue. I, and for that matter, the Ministry of Finance, have never misreported data to Parliament, as has been alleged. On Tuesday, 13th November 2022, the proponents clarified that their concerns relating to the reporting of fiscal data. In their submission, they alleged that different sets of data were presented to the IMF and the people of Ghana. That is untrue. The 2019 Article 4, which they cited, actually clearly demonstrates that the computing and reporting of the deficit is consistent between the government and the IMF, as shown on the table labeled Ghana Selected Economic and Financial Indicators, 2017 to 2024, on page 4 of the IMF Article 4 and Appendix 3A of the 2019 budget. More importantly, we were under a fund program during that period and could not have been able to exit the program if there were inaccuracies with the data we reported and the methodology used for computing the deficit. In actual fact, in the most recent IMF Article 4 report from 2021, one sees clearly demonstrated that the methodology utilized in computing the deficit is and has been consistent, as shown in the tables labeled Ghana Selected Economic Financial Indicators 2019 to 22 on page 3 of the press release numbered PR 21/221. According to Honorable Atto-Forson, Mr. Chairman, paragraph 16, page 11 I'm quoting of the staff report, Article 4 says, fiscal rules under Ghana. Public Financial Management Act fiscal rules could be strengthened. Box 1, it goes on to say that about 2.8 percentage point of GDP in financial energy sector payments were recorded below the line in the year 2019 budget because the government considers the financial sector cost as a one-off and energy cost as a debt amortization. Best international practices could include these transactions above the line as they reflect either direct government obligation or government transactions transfers to state-owned enterprises. Because of the exceptional nature of the expenditure, chairs, financial sector cleanup and energy sector IPP payments, we agreed with the fund that it could be treated below the line in the table earlier. Co-chairs, it is also alleged that I have breached the second fiscal rule under the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2018, Act 982, namely the primary balance in 2018 and 2019. Firstly, I maintain the legal position that Act 982 was not passed to take a retrospective effect. It is equally instructive to note that the fiscal and primary balance targets presented to Parliament for those 2 years did not have any estimate on the FinSec cleanup cost above the line. Consequently, the primary balance target that we were targeting were actually surpluses of 1.6% of GDP in the main budget for 2018 and 1.1% in 2019. This, per our definition, included the FinSec cleanup costs that, if applicable, could not be used to reiterate. The agreed style of reporting with the IMF was to show both a deficit, including FinSec cleanup, and one excluding it. I wish to state that the allegation of deliberate misreporting of economic data to Parliament is completely not true. Since I took office in 2017, I have served the country with integrity and honesty. Under my leadership at the Ministry of Finance, there have been significant improvements in the accurate reporting of public finances. Today, under President Nana Akufo-Addo, Ghanaians are enjoying greater accountability and transparency in the management of the public purse than any other period under the Fourth Republic. Since 2017, government has complied with the reporting provisions in the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, including budget implementation report, fiscal reports, public debt reports, revenue management reports, ESLA reports, etc. The proponents have raised the issue of treatment of energy sector IPP payments and financial sector cleanup payments in the fiscal tables. The Ministry of Finance has explained its position on the treatment of these two items to the relevant committees of Parliament during their scrutiny of the annual budget from 2018 to 2021. The Ministry of Finance actually issued a press release on the subject on 10th May 2020, which we had hoped should have put this matter to rest. The ministry included the energy sector IPP payments in the amortization line in the fiscal framework during the 2018 to 2081 period. Financial sector cleanup costs were included in the fiscal framework annually for the period 2018 to 2021 to reflect the issuances of bonds to cover the non-cash costs. Contrary to the position of others that the Ministry of Finance did not reflect the FinSec payments and the energy sector IPP payments in the fiscal framework, I want to emphasize with the budget document as evidence that these payments were reflected in the fiscal framework. Energy sector IPP payments were treated as amortization, and the non-cash financial sector cleanup payments were reflected in the memo item, referred to Appendix 2A of the fiscal tables in the relevant annual budget. The MOF reflected the FinSec cleanup payments in the memo item called fiscal deficit for the following reasons. They are extraordinary one-time payment items which need not be mixed up with traditional fiscal operations. And they are largely bonds, and capturing them above the line will imply recognizing their payments now, recognize their payments again when the payments fall due in the future, a possible double counting. a method that the proponent is or ought to have been very familiar with from his years as Deputy Minister for Finance. Likewise, the energy sector IPP payments were reflected in the fiscal framework as part of the amortization line under the financing part of the fiscal table for the following